Good morning, everyone, wherever you might be in the world today. My name is Edward James, and I'm the Director of Content and Analysis at MEED Projects. And over the next 20 minutes or so, I'll be giving a rundown of the key trends and developments that have taken place in the region's projects market this year. As you know, it's been a quite unusual year, quite a difficult year for a lot of people and a lot of companies. And as we're now approaching the end of the year, it's a good time to look back and see what has happened in 2020, and then of course look forward into 2021. Now, as I mentioned, I work for MEED Projects. MEED Projects is the online project tracking platform covering the MENA, Africa, Central Asia regions, and currently covering more than or close to 20,000 active projects worth more than $10 million in the region. And it's by tracking the projects in the market that we are able to quantify and evaluate, assess and analyze trends that have been happening both historically and going forward. And it's a unique and valuable insight into the projects market today and going forward. There is a lot of data taken from MEED Projects today in this presentation, so don't feel you have to note everything down as I speak now. This is being recorded and will be made available to all of you later after the summit is completed, and you'll be able to look at this presentation along with the others today at your own time. And of course, at the end, I'll be giving you my contact details, so if you wish, you'll be able to ask me questions and or chat about the projects market and its latest developments. So let's start off this presentation by giving a quick overview of the historical projects market in the MENA region. So as you can see here from this graph, there have been some $2.5 trillion worth of contracts awarded over the last decade. We can see that the market peaked in 2014, 2015 at about $225 billion. Then of course we had the oil price fall from late 2014 onwards, and we see a subsequent fall in project spending reaching an idea of $137 billion in total contract awards in the MENA region last year. So we can see there's a close correlation between the oil price and project market's performance. Not a surprise, really. The higher the oil price, the more the government revenues in the region. And as most sectors in the region are funded directly by the state, you would expect the higher the oil price, the greater the number of projects. As the oil price has fallen, the government revenues have fallen, the expenditures have declined as well as a result, and the value and number of projects has also fallen, reaching, as I mentioned, a low point last year of just $137 billion. And we'll be looking at how the market has been affected in 2020 and with COVID-19 a little bit later in the next few slides. Now let's take that same historical data since 2010 and split it by country. And you can see here that there are the two largest project markets in the region by a large margin are Saudi Arabia and the UAE, at between $400 and $450 billion each. And you can see then there's a long gap fall before the next largest projects market, which is still significant, which is Qatar, nearly $200 billion, then Egypt, $150 billion, and then Kuwait, $130 billion, Iraq, Oman, Algeria, and so on. So while the two largest markets have been Saudi Arabia and the UAE, the other markets still offer quite large opportunities historically, and still considerable project markets in their own right. Nonetheless, as you can see, Saudi Arabia and the UAE are by far the two largest markets historically in the region. Again, taking that same data, this time slicing it by sector, you can see that the construction sector, as might be expected, is by far and away the largest single project sector in the MENA region, at more than $600 billion worth of contracts awarded in it since 2010. It's more than twice as large as the next largest sector, which is transport, a little over $300 billion. We then have power at over $200 billion, likewise with oil, and then gas at over $100 billion, then water, industrial, and the petrochemical sector rounding it off. So construction, which in MEED projects terminology covers residential, commercial construction, hospital, healthcare projects, leisure, malls, tourism projects, as well as schools and other educational projects, is by far the largest single element. And then we've got transport, which is roads, airports, ports, railways, metros, and so forth, in second place. So as I mentioned, let's look at 2020 and the specific impact of COVID-19 on the projects market in the MENA region this year. And perhaps a little surprise that the pandemic has hit the projects market hard, just as it has many other sectors of the economy, not just in the region, but around the world. As you can see here, January and February, fairly good start to the year. Before the pandemic hit, $17 billion in January, a little less, $13 billion in February. But then we entered lockdown as the governments reacted to the virus. And we saw in March a very sharp, substantial fall in project spending to just over $7 billion in March and April, before collapsing entirely to just over $3 billion in May. We recovered somewhat in August. There was just a small blip before declining again in September, October, and November. And this month so far, as of mid-December, we haven't seen all that much project activity or contract awards so far in December. So as you can see, there's been a very sharp distinction between the first couple of months of the year pre-pandemic and March and thereon, where the pandemic took hold, and you can see that clearly project market activity dropped very substantially, as might be expected. So when we total all that up, we see some $65 billion or so of contracts awarded this year, compared with the $130 billion or so last year. And you can obviously see that 2020 is going to end up as being easily the worst year for project spending and project awards in the MENA region for about a generation, at least since 2002, and the start of the projects market boom. So it's a very unique situation, which has resulted in a very sharp fall in project activity. However, when we look a little bit more closely at 2020 data and look at it on a country by country basis, we can see a somewhat different picture. You can see here that Saudi Arabia and the UAE are the two largest projects markets still, but have also been the ones which have been worst affected when compared with 2019. You can see Saudi Arabia down about 2/3 on 2019 levels, declining from just under $50 billion of contract awards to approximately $18 billion. And likewise, the UAE falling from over $30 billion of contract activity last year to about $80 billion again in 2020. On the other hand, if I go to Egypt, if I look at Qatar, Iraq, Oman, Algeria, and Kuwait, the projects market is either flat in terms of contract awards or actually up on 2019 numbers, albeit from much smaller base, much smaller numbers. Nonetheless, you can see that other markets haven't been hit quite as bad as the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So it would seem that the larger the project market, the larger the market would have fallen in 2020. Actually, if you look at the Qatar market, Egypt market, Omani market, Kuwaiti market, it's actually in most cases flat or even up on last year. So it is a somewhat distorted picture when we look at spending levels. Likewise, if we look at the individual sectors in 2020, we can see that some sectors have been far worse hit than others. Most specifically, we can see that the construction sector, which is the largest single sector historically in the projects market, has also been the one that has been hit hardest in 2020. You can see that we've gone from over $45 billion of construction awards in the sector last year to a little over $27 billion in 2020. So that's quite a sharp fall, about 30–40%. On the other hand, transport sector is likely to be flat year on year. Power sector as well is performing quite well compared with 2019. Oil sector is down, but not as much as the construction. Only really gas, water, petrochemical, and industrial sectors have matched the construction sector in the declines. So when we're looking at 2020 and we're talking about the impact of COVID-19 in the overall projects market performance this year, really we can pinpoint Saudi Arabia and UAE as being the worst hit markets, and within them construction, gas, water, industrial and petrochemicals, which have been the market's worst hit. On the other hand, other geographies, other sectors, story really isn't quite so bad. So it is really a case of looking at individual sectors and individual markets, understanding how the market overall has performed. So while we're on the topic of 2020, let's look at the largest projects market, the largest contractors this year in terms of success, in terms of contracts awarded, to get an idea of how they have performed individually. And it's quite interesting to see a new face in the rankings in terms of leading the way in guise of JGC Corporation of Japan. Now, Japanese contractors were dominating the market 2 decades ago. They've somewhat ebbed out of the region in the last few years, but the award of the new Basra refinery in Iraq has really seen JGC take the lead in terms of success this year. It's followed by SEPCO 3 of China, which has won a number of major power generation contract awards. And then we've also got a list of the regular players in terms of EPC work in the region: TR, Samsung Engineering, Samsung CMT, L&T, and so on. So in terms of the top MENA EPC contractors by value of work award this year, you can see a lot of the regular contractors you might expect to see up there, as well as perhaps something unexpected in terms of JGC, which has come back strongly into the market this year. Now, in terms of the top civil contractors in the construction and transport space, again, somewhat surprising in the lead. We've got Daewoo E&C, which is a regular player in the region, but has taken the lead this year by virtue of its winning the Grand Fort Fowl container terminal contract in Iraq, multi-billion-dollar deal, which we won earlier this year. And then in second place, another fairly new face in the region, Serba Dynamic, which earlier this year won the $1 billion contract to build an innovation hub in Abu Dhabi, as well as another $400 million contract to build a very large data center in Abu Dhabi as well. We then got Urbicon, which won a major $1 billion contract to build a massive new real estate project for Bara Real Estate in Qatar. And then we've seen Nesman Partners Al Mubani of Saudi Arabia in fourth and fifth place by virtue of major contracts in Saudi Arabia. We've also seen Hassan Alam win a lot of work, mainly in Egypt, and of course, the ubiquitous China State Construction, which has maintained its run of success. The list of other companies in the top 20 include Turkish and Saudi, Korean, Egyptian contractors, all been successful this year in the region. So in terms of turning those numbers into actual individual projects, and this table here illustrates the top 20 or so plus projects awarded in 2020. As I mentioned, you can see here the Basra refinery upgrade is the largest contract, single EPC contract awarded this year to JGC at more than close to $4 billion. We've seen the Hassi Massoud refinery project also awarded this year in Algeria, the previous mentioned Grand Fowl port, another oil refinery complex in Asyut in Egypt. And then we've got the two largest civil construction projects, the King Faisal and King Salman relocation projects in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The also previously mentioned Block 7 Innovation Hub in Abu Dhabi with the Serba Dynamic. And then we see a range of other metro power projects and transport facilities awarded throughout the region. So you can see here a broad mix of countries led the way across a broad list of projects. So some very substantial projects awarded this year, despite the overall decline in spending in the MENA region. So we looked historically at the last 10 years and 2020. Now let's move forward as we enter 2021 and the outlook for the year ahead. So this slide shows the future pipeline of work in the short term by taking into account the value of projects currently out to bid, where the tender has been issued and in many cases the bids have been submitted. You can see here that there are close to $200 billion worth of projects tendered, primarily in the UAE, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, with close to $40 billion in each market, then Iraq at $30 billion, and then followed by Egypt, Oman and Kuwait. So despite 2020 being a very slow and somewhat declining year, the outlook for 2021 is a lot more positive if we just take into account projects which are out to bid and which could be awarded over the next few weeks and months. Remember, these are projects where the tenders are already been issued, where in many cases bids have been submitted, and so there's quite a high potential for them to be awarded in the short term. Sure, not all of them will be awarded. I'm sure some of them will be delayed further or even cancelled. Nonetheless, if we just take this $200 billion figure, that is a very substantial increase on the $60 to $80 billion we're likely to end up on for 2020. So we can be a lot more optimistic going forward, and we're seeing that backlog of projects which should have been awarded in 2020, which have been delayed. We are seeing that moving into 2021, and therefore we should be seeing a big uptick in contract activity in the next few months ahead. Again, if we take that $200 billion of projects out to bid in the market and we split them up by sector, we can see quite a nice broad mix of different sectors in the short-term pipeline. Gas projects lead the way, led by the Het and Ghasha Sour gas project in Saudi Arabia for Aramco. We've got some $52 billion of gas projects out to bid. We've then got some $33 billion of oil projects in the market, $31 billion of transport projects, and some $31 billion of power projects. And then with construction and water, industrial and petrochemical markets making up their remainder. So we've got a nice mix of projects going forward across a number of different countries. And as I said, we can be broadly fairly confident about the 2021 market, at least as we stand today at the end of 2020. Now let's look at those projects a bit more specifically in terms of those markets, those projects out to bid right now. I mentioned the Het and Ghasha Sour gas project in terms of the gas sector, but the big one in 2021, which everyone is expecting to be awarded, is of course the gas LNG program in Qatar. It's a massive $20 billion plus investment, which is set to transform the oil and gas industry in Qatar and set to provide many companies with billions of dollars of work in the years to come. Other significant projects over 2021 include the long-awaited Haditha-Aqaba pipeline between Iraq and Jordan, the Al4 oil refinery, which was tendered recently by the Ministry of Oil in Iraq, the facility IWPP in Qatar, the Het and Ghasha Sour gas project, as I mentioned, but also not only that, but the Dalma field as well, retender for ADNOC, the Sheikh gas project as well in Abu Dhabi, and various petrochemical, desalination, power projects, and of course and a large number of construction and transport schemes as well. So this is just a list of some 25 projects which are out in the market, out to bid across the MENA region, and which have a good likelihood of being awarded in 2021, just to give you an idea and flavour of what those projects are. And then finally, just to round off this presentation today, what are some of the longer term projects in the region? Well, as you can see here, there are still a very significant large number of projects in the pipeline in the MENA region. If we look further afield to projects in pre-qualification or design, feed, or study, you can see there are close to $3.5 trillion worth of known planned unawarded projects in the MENA region, led by Saudi Arabia at more than $1.2 trillion, and of course the $500 billion plus NEOM project. We then have UAE close to $700 billion worth of future projects. Egypt at more than $400 billion, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Algeria, and so on. So regardless of what's happened in 2020, when we're looking at 2021 and the years after that, we can see there's a still very significant pipeline of projects. And if I look across different sectors, you can see that just as it has been historically, construction remains the largest future segment at close to more than close to $2 trillion of projects in the pipeline, followed by transport, power, and then oil. All sectors have a very considerable pipeline of projects indeed. And we know it's been a difficult year. It has been a difficult few years, but driven by strong population growth and strong economic growth, and of course a need for infrastructure and overall investment in projects, the pipeline of project activity in the MENA region remains very strong and will be strong for many years to come. So I hope that's given you a brief, good, insightful overview of the projects market historically, this year and going forward. I hope it's giving you a little bit of optimism after a very tricky 12 months. And if you wish to reach out to me, ask me any questions at all, please, you can see my email address below. Feel free to reach out to me. I hope you found this useful. And as I mentioned, it's being recorded. You will be able to watch it again, read it in your own time. And all that leaves me to do is to thank you once more and to pass you on to Danny Richards, Global Data's lead construction economist, who will be now talking on stage one. Find the link to your left. We'll be talking about technological trends in the construction industry in the region. So once again, thank you very much. And I hope next time to be able to deliver to you in presentation face-to-face once the pandemic is over and life goes back to normal. Thank you very much.